Welcome to ASEAN in Focus Weekend Edition. I am Nea Mangawang, your host for today's episode. Next year, 2017, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, will be celebrating its 50th year, its golden anniversary. And this historic occasion will be celebrated here in the Philippines as our country hosts the ASEAN Summit next year. It is truly very significant, coming at a time when ASEAN has emerged as an influential regional community with over 600 million people. ASEAN's potential market is larger than the European Union or North America. Next to the People's Republic of China and India, ASEAN has the world's third largest labor force that remains relatively young. What does this mean for the Philippines, which is at the center of the controversy on the South China Sea dispute, an issue that some say is threatening ASEAN unity? But before we proceed, let's watch this.
Once upon a time, in the southeast, 5 great men gathered in Bangkok. They were from 5 neighboring lands, hoping to forge a strong bond, establish a secure community, and build a prosperous future for their peoples. One was from Indonesia, one from Malaysia, one from Singapore, one from the Philippines, and one played host at home in Thailand. The 5 great statesmen of Southeast Asia embarked upon a long journey, uncertain of the road ahead, but strongly determined to get to the final destination. Along the journey, they gained 5 more friends. The 10 great Southeast Asian nations have been traveling on the same road together. Then they feel that they share a common identity and a sense of belonging. They want to achieve a shared destiny, goals, and values. Together, they have founded one vision, one identity, one community. They call it the ASEAN community, in which their peoples will enjoy political stability and national security, economic prosperity, social happiness, and cultural beauties. The 10 great states of Southeast Asia resolved to ensure sustainable development for the benefit of present and future generations, and to place the well-being, livelihood, and welfare of the peoples at the center of the ASEAN community building process. The association they have formed is called ASEAN. The document they have committed to make their dream a reality is called the ASEAN Charter. The peoples of the 10 ASEAN member states are now joining their governments in building a true ASEAN community.
ASEAN sa tila.
Yeah.
Oh, see?
About ASEAN.
Okay, so explain about ASEAN, whatever he knows.
Thai, Thai, Brunei, Philippines,
Thai.
Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Myanmar.
Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus Weekend Edition. The ASEAN rotates the chairmanship annually among its 10 member states, namely Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. This will be the fourth time for the Philippines to chair the regional organization. The country was ASEAN chair in 2006, 1999, and 1987. It is important, too, to know that in 1967, the Philippines' Foreign Ambassador Narciso R. Ramos is one of the 5 founding fathers of the ASEAN when it was established that year. The ASEAN is scheduled to hold a summit in the country as part of the chairmanship duties in 2017. In February this year, former President Benigno Aquino III signed Administrative Order Number 48, creating the National Organizing Council for the Philippines, hosting of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, in 2017, and prescribing its authority and functions. The President said there is a need to constitute a separate National Organizing Council to manage and supervise all tasks and activities related to the Philippines' hosting of the major ASEAN meetings. Ambassador Rosario Manalo recently won a seat in the United Nations Treaty Body on Gender Equality and Women's Rights in the elections held at the UN headquarters in June this year, described this event as significant indeed. Ambassador Manalo is also the special representative of the Philippines to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights and was a junior diplomat in 1967 when the ASEAN Declaration was signed in Bangkok, Thailand.
It certainly is very significant, considering too that we were founders of ASEAN. Amongst the 5, it was then the father of retired President Fidel V. Ramos, who was the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Secretary Narciso Ramos, who signed the ASEAN Declaration in Bansayan. We were only 5 countries then. All right. To be there and to bring it over for 50 years. Actually, in that delegation that signed the Bansayan, I'm the only one existing now in the Philippine delegation. Because I was a very junior young officer at the age of 26 when we signed that. Yeah. So I saw ASEAN grow. It was in my hands in the Foreign Office, especially at the time when Secretary of Foreign Affairs was Carlos P. Romulo.
Former Defense Secretary Orly Mercado, who had served as the first permanent representative of the Philippines to ASEAN in 2009, also stressed the significance of the Philippines hosting of the ASEAN's 50th anniversary next year.
Well, actually, when you get to 50, you really have to take stock of where you've been in the past and where you are now and where you're going. Invariably, we will have to play a very important role in hosting and providing the environment for discussion and see where we are going. There are going to be a lot of prognostications as to whether ASEAN has been quote-unquote a success in these past 50 years. But what is important here is that the region is now a center of growth in the whole world. And we have to tackle some very, very basic issues aside from economic growth. Our efforts to eradicate poverty as mandated by the United Nations, and also our effort to democratize our processes in ASEAN. And that means raising the level of democratic participation in ASEAN, and also building institutions for democracy in the ASEAN member states.
Meanwhile, Ambassador Wilfredo Villacorta Jr. recalled how the ASEAN member countries formed themselves together in 1967 and how since then it had become a powerful and influential economic region. Ambassador Villacorta served as the Philippine ambassador and permanent representative to the ASEAN from 2011 to 2012 and also served as Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN from 2003 to 2006.
I remember those were golden days because ASEAN was a phenomenon. It's like the Lord of the Rings. Some of you might have watched that film Lord of the Rings. Professor Ba, I'm sure you have. And this is a group of hobbits, right? And they were the ones that control the ring. They own the ring that brings with it power. And the giants were trying to get the ring from them. But so I liken ASEAN to these hobbits, you know? These powerful hobbits. Frodo, I think, was their leader. So we thought that, well, indeed, the hobbits that we were able to influence the big powers at that time, wittingly or unwittingly. Even some organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization borrowed, and even APEC, for that matter, borrowed the mechanics, the procedures, the premises of ASEAN, including the institutional structure.
From the ASEAN Declaration, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, we had to have the ASEAN Charter to institutionalize ASEAN and be more constant in addressing the challenges of not just of the region but the rest of the world. How are we as ASEAN, as a group, going to contribute to peace and security not just in our region but with the rest of the world? How will we contribute on economic development, social amelioration, and all of these issues concerning humanitarian assistance, human rights, etc. We had to respond to all of that. How, in what ways would ASEAN develop friendly relations, not only amongst the 10 of us, but with the rest of the world? And how could we become the center in Southeast Asia of harmonizing or trying to achieve these three goals: peace, security, economic growth, and social cohesion. Despite the diversity that we have, not just on civilizational issues, but on economic growth and the nature of our political institutions and governance. That is the issues that confront ASEAN even up to today. And we managed to exist as ASEAN with all these issues amongst us because we have ways and means of relating to each other in the ASEAN way.
During one of the Mangrove Forum series of the Foreign Service Institute, a former Senator and Defense Secretary Orlan Mercado also stressed the uniqueness of ASEAN.
The ASEAN way, which is, as we know, pledging work by consensus and turning a blind eye to unpleasant events in other countries, is something I think that has to be fully examined. I think we should, at this moment, where we are overtaken by events, come to question the history of this particular mechanism of building consensus and ask ourselves whether it is still relevant or it has to be drastically changed. I do realize that it cannot be easily done or that we move cautiously, but in my short stint in ASEAN, my first impression was, my God, I've been given an assignment. Maybe God is teaching me patience. That's why He made me a diplomat here. So in ASEAN, it's really like watching grass grow. And I have always been uncomfortable. I wanted to do something. And you know, I said, why can't we question this thing about consensus and ASEAN way? Why is the base of the institution building of this organization dependent on the slowest? Why does everybody have to agree? Doesn't democracy tell us majority wins as long as you protect the rights of the minority and they're part of the process? Then you have to accept that you do not have the majority and you have to follow. A larger issue is how fast are we going to integrate at the rate we're going? In next year, in 2017, we will be 50 years. And we are still doing this consensus thing and talking about centrality when we are not central anymore. I don't know, that's my impression. So maybe we should set it up a little bit. And as long as nobody experiences pain, maybe it is time for us. I am boldened by the fact that it appears that this is now the dawning of political incorrectness in this country. We can speak out already and question things.
All right, when we return, let's hear more discussions about the ASEAN and the so-called ASEAN centrality. Stay with us. Welcome back. When talking about the ASEAN, the phrase ASEAN centrality comes next to mind. What is ASEAN centrality? Some scholars believe this encompasses ASEAN's ability to maintain consensus, carry out collective action, and achieve its stated goals. While some had praised this, other political analysts and academicians criticize it as being too slow.
It may be too slow with non-ASEAN member countries. As far as I'm concerned, I'll give it an answer. So what? That's your problem, not mine. This is the way it works for ASEAN. This is the way it will be. And it cannot be changed just because it does not serve the interest of another non-ASEAN country or just because they don't like the idea that we have the ASEAN way. Excuse me, we are ASEAN, you're not, so do as you please. We'll do the way ASEAN cooperates, consensus, and everything else in the ASEAN way.
Even Ambassador Wilfredo Villacorta Jr., a former ASEAN Deputy Secretary General, claims this ASEAN centrality is just a myth.
Right now, I don't believe that centrality is still a fact. On the contrary, you have these two big powers implicitly or explicitly forcing us to take sides. And it has the effect, the effective, it has the effect of dividing ASEAN.
He was, however, corrected by his mentor, former Ambassador Rosario Manalo, who chaired the drafting of the ASEAN Charter, the fundamental legal instrument for the 10 Southeast Asian countries that comprises ASEAN. She expertly defined what ASEAN centrality is, including the consensus building principle in ASEAN.
When I speak here this afternoon, please do not judge me as pro-American anti-Chinese nor pro-Chinese anti-American. I'm simply pro-Filipino, and being pro-Filipino, I'm pro-ASEAN. I'm a child of ASEAN. I was a simple neophyte cadet when we founded ASEAN, taking down the notes in one side when we created ASEAN in August 1967. And I grew up imbibing much of ASEAN and became the chairperson of the charter negotiations which we have today. The issues you have raised with respect to ASEAN are not issues. They will stay there forever because that is what ASEAN is. This is not the first time that the issue of ASEAN centrality has arisen. It will remain ASEAN centrality. And what is the true meaning of ASEAN centrality? That when we work as the 10 member states together in an organization, in our relations with anyone in the whole world, meaning other countries of the world, we must see to it that whatever we carry on with them will benefit ASEAN. That is the meaning of ASEAN centrality. Nothing more, nothing less. You have all major interpretations, but that is not correct. I'm telling you what it is. I still run in the corridors of ASEAN, and I can see how it is working. Now, the question of the consensus building, you will not change that either. That is what identifies the region. We know how to build consensus, and that doesn't mean that we don't know how to come to decisions. If you have all these decisions that we have today in ASEAN, it's because of consensus. That doesn't mean we just say amen, yes or no. We have internal debates. Debates from the summit, the heads of states and government, debates of the foreign ministers, debates of the other ministers in charge of other subjects in ASEAN, debates of the senior officials, and discussions can last up to 3 or 4 in the morning. Maybe you were not aware of that, but that is it. But we don't have to vote. We'll have to agree on how to carry on and find a decision in which we can live together under that decision. That's the ASEAN consensus. While the people of the West would do, I vote here and I vote there, and you create openly dissension to build the image that ASEAN is one. We carry on through consensus. And that is how it is even today. Telling us that we are moving slowly, from whose point of view? The West? Well, maybe so. So what? That is what serves the interest of ASEAN and the member states. That's how it's going to be. You will not be able to change that because 10 member states work very hard to bring about a decision.
Welcome back. With the perceived U.S.-China rivalry in the South China Sea, some ASEAN observers fear this would put the ASEAN region in a dilemma and worse, into conflict.
And there is that fact. Come on, this is a wake-up call. We are on the brink of war. Both powers are exercising the brinkmanship style. And we are being dragged into it, and once more there is this danger, the very clear danger of Southeast Asia being once more the battleground of the imperial powers.
But Ambassador Rosario Manalo, who once headed the group that drafted the ASEAN Charter, said this was not so and there was no need to raise alarm bells.
We don't have to. We can have peace and relate both United States and China. Even if we have 6 countries of ASEAN, our claims, we can tackle that in peace and in harmony with China, making the United States happy.
Meanwhile, former Senator and Defense Secretary Orlando Mercado explained the dynamics in the South China Sea as neighboring countries and even China fight control for territories.
That's part of the dynamic. Any contest for territory invariably involves in your armamentarium not only weapons or as a deterrent, as a threat, but even economic sanctions, political sanctions, or political moves that will marginalize you. So in contests like this, they use everything, including advantages but if in the economy. But this can be modulated by negotiations. This can be talked about. There's nothing, as long as you don't carry the guns, you can discuss these things in a calm manner and move forward.
One of the ways forward is through development, the ASEAN Economic Community.
Establishment of the ASEAN community, particularly on the economic end. The process of more ASEAN economic integration started this year, and it envisioned 20 more years to really consolidate what we have already put in there, so that there will be one ASEAN economic space, the freedom of movement of goods and services in that space, and the investment in that space by the 10 ASEAN member states, first and foremost, and whoever is willing to work with us on those issues.
Manalo also exclaimed that there was unity in diversity in ASEAN. In the end, it is very clear that ASEAN now has a voice.
Yes, of course we do have a voice. We sit as observers too in the United Nations, aside from our own member states being members of the UN. Of course we have a voice. If the European Union invites us, that means we have a voice. Huh? If the United Nations listens to us, we have a voice. You know? If Asia Pacific asks them, listens to us, we have a voice. ASEAN has a voice. Southeast Asia has a voice. It's all because of ASEAN, the organization.
Alright, that's all for this episode of ASEAN in Focus Weekend. I'm Nea Mangawang and I am Juan with Funny Facts.